Elizabeth asked me to talk about some cat behavior, and I decided it sounds like a good idea to go over some myths and truths. There's a lot of myths surrounding cat behavior, and that's for good reason. Cats don't like to be figured out. They're pretty mystical creatures. So we'll go through a couple of myths today and what they might actually mean. So we'll start with a little bit of kind of behavior 101, and at the end we'll have some time for questions. If anybody has any questions, any burning things that they wanted to bring to the table today. So a little bit about me. I have two cats of my own. They're up there. That's Chloe and Pixie. I also have two children and a dog who loves his cats just as much as I do. I am a licensed veterinary technician. I've been in the field for about 10, 11 years now. I have been pursuing behavior as an interest since about 2016 when Fear Free was first introduced. If you're not familiar with Fear Free, it is an education company that is geared towards educating both veterinary professionals and other pet professionals alike in methods to reduce stress, fear, and anxiety with vet visits, as well as now grooming and even pet sitting, dog walking, all that sort of stuff. And they're constantly coming out with new certifications. So check them out if you haven't already. A little bit about just general behavior. Whenever we're talking about behavior problems of any kind, you are always going to want to pick out three things, not just the behavior, but what is happening before the behavior and what is happening after the behavior. So we will do behavior analysis in kind of a three contingency, three-step sort of process. The antecedent stimulus is the cause, the behavior, and then the consequence, or the stimulus that is providing the reinforcement for that behavior afterwards. There's always going to be some reason, something that is happening or that is being done to the animal to cause a behavior, and that's something that is going to be reinforcing that behavior if it's continuing. There's two different kinds of training that we can use. There's operant training and classical training. You'll hear these referred to as a lot of different terms. Operant and classical are the ones that we'll talk about today. Operant, you can think of it like operating. There is a purposeful action that is going on whenever the behavior is being performed. Classical conditioning or classical training is going to be more focused on reflex. Anything that, if I were to say, try and reach my hand towards your face, you're automatically going to blink and protect your eye. That is a classical response. And I've put this little 4 quadrants of operant conditioning square up here for you, courtesy of Lily Chin. It's one of my favorite artists. She does a lot of these little drawings and illustrations for body language, behavior, and training. And this is a great one to reference if you ever get confused about what is positive reinforcement, what is negative reinforcement, what are positive and negative punishment, and what does that mean when we're talking about how to change behavior and how to train behavior. The first thing that you want to do, though, with any sort of behavior problem is consult your veterinarian and rule out a medical cause for a behavior change. So without further ado, we'll get to the myths that we'll talk about tonight. So myth number 1, purring means my cat is happy. And that is true a lot of the time. If your cat is sitting in your lap and purring and you're petting your cat, I'm sure your cat is very happy to be sitting in your lap. However, if I have a cat come into the clinic and she is sitting on the table and she's crouched and she has her eyes closed and she's not paying attention to anyone, nobody's paying attention to her, and she's purring, chances are there's something else going on. Now, that could be that she's experiencing pain or stress. There's a lot of different things that a purr can mean. And this is a great example of why it's really important to know context and to focus on more than just what is happening in that moment. What you might be seeing will change based on context. What's the environment? What's going on? What is the individual showing besides just that one behavior sign. So if you think of, I'm going to say the D word, if you think of a dog and you have a dog that's wagging its tail, that wag can mean a lot of different things, right? It depends on how fast the tail is wagging. Where is it held? And what is the situation? Is it wagging really fast and really emphatically because the owner has just gotten home and the dog is really excited? Or is it wagging really fast and kind of in a shorter kind of pattern because they're a little bit nervous and they're a little bit unsure about a situation? The same goes for purring or any other behavior that's happening. It doesn't necessarily mean what it normally is thought to mean. It depends on context. Myth number 2 is cats are solitary or not social, and that's simply untrue. Certainly some cats would prefer to be the only cat in the household. Sometimes cats don't like other animals. It will depend a little bit on their socialization, their early life experience of what they've been exposed to, who they've been exposed to, and whether those experiences were positive or not. A lot of cat colonies exist in this area where they are social. They do live in groups and they have their people, essentially. They have their animals that they're comfortable with. They share the scents of one another through pheromones and their facial pheromones. Yes. And so they actually do really like to be with others. So a lot of times, and if you're familiar with shelter work or you've adopted a cat before, a lot of times shelters will recommend get 2 kittens, don't just get 1, because they do tend to do better when they have a housemate that they're comfortable with, that they're familiar with. Bringing a cat in to a home where there is already a cat doesn't always go all that well. And I think that's where this myth kind of comes from, is that cats, they don't mesh well immediately most of the time whenever you're trying to introduce 2 stranger cats. So we do have to be careful with trying to make that relationship work and do it in a way that is responsible. And if anybody needs help with that, I can certainly help with that at another time. And I have a ton of resources for how to introduce cats to one another. But the basics of this myth are cats are very social, just with the right counterparts. This is one of my friends that I work with. This is her cat, Jijo, with Banana, the bunny. They just had rub and boop, and he just loves his bunnies. Myth number 3, cats are spiteful. I have a hard time with this one personally, because I'm going to tell you a story. And this is, yes, a picture of a toilet. This is my toilet at my old house. My husband was very kind and he tried to facilitate this process of trying to toilet train our cats in our very small space by providing a stool on the side of the toilet. The reason for this is that this is the second time I actually tried to toilet train my cats. The first time I only had 1 and she did great. She got to, if you're not familiar with this system, it's the city kitty. You take out a ring of that pan in the toilet I think it was like every week or so, depending on the cat's ability to train. And when I was in college in my apartment, we got her to the point where she was peeing in the toilet without any city kitty there. She was peeing in the toilet, no problem. But she wasn't pooping in the toilet. She was pooping in the bathtub. Easy cleanup, right? We were like, okay, this is fine. We'll get there. We'll figure something out. So I think I got a padded toilet seat. And I was like, she must be slipping off the toilet seat. That didn't work. I don't remember how long went by before she decided enough's enough. I'm pooping in your bed now. And then she got her litter box back. So this was a second attempt several years later. And I thought, this has got to be it. She's going to have this little stool next to it, so she'll be able to posture to poop properly. She immediately saw that thing and went directly to the bed and pooped on the bed again. And I said, okay, fine. we'll just stick with the litter box, and that's fine. We're in a bigger house now where we don't have as much of an issue with space, so we gave up on the toilet training, and that's fine. But I tell this story because her pooping in my bed felt extremely spiteful because nothing else had changed. Why not continue to poop in the bathtub where it was an easy cleanup and it didn't really bother me that much? You know, we don't know everything about the way that animals feel. There's a lot of study and a lot of research that's been done on animal emotion and animal behavior and cognition, and there are answers that we just will never have. So the general accepted belief at this point is that cats can't feel spite. There's a reason for that behavior. In my opinion, this was 100% spite, but I'm sure if I were to go back and look, there was probably some sort of antecedent stimulus that caused her to change from pooping in the tub to pooping on the bed. And I just missed it because I didn't know what I was looking for. And that's a lot of the problem with finding out these behavior problems, is a lot of times you see the problem and you see the behavior and what's going on and what happens afterwards, but you don't necessarily see the stimulus that's happening before that's causing that behavior. So we may never know why she pooped in my bed, but it was effective. Myth number 4 is that cats cannot be trained. And this is one that is applicable to a lot of animals. I've heard my dog's not food motivated, so I can't train him. And cats are definitely food motivated. If you ever have seen a cat that's not food motivated in some way, please let me know, because I think that they need to see a veterinarian. But cats, just like any other animal, humans included, all follow the same principles of behavior. We do the same applied behavior analysis for animals as we do for humans. I am in graduate school right now working on my applied animal behavior and welfare degree, and most of my textbooks are human behavior textbooks because it applies to all species. We're animals too, believe it or not. So we follow those same rules. The difference tends to be the level of cognition, and that's why people tend to think certain animals are not as deserving of care or love or respect as humans, because we have higher cognition, and that is a whole different talk, a whole different conversation for another day. But the point is that cats can be trained. You just have to find the right reinforcer. This goes for dogs too. Like I said, it goes for any animal. But what I find is that people don't, I'm so sorry you guys missed the first slide, but if you go back to that first slide with the positive and negative reinforcement and the positive and negative punishment, what people don't realize is what you think is positive reinforcement doesn't necessarily matter if the animal doesn't view it as positive reinforcement. So if you my dog loves hot dogs, but say I got another dog and he thought that oyster crackers were the bee's knees. If I tried to give him hot dogs, he wouldn't necessarily work very hard for them if he really wanted the oyster crackers instead. So reinforcement and punishment are really in the eye of the receiver of whether it's punishment or reinforcement. Disclaimer, I am a positive reinforcement only proponent. That is where the science is. All of the science that we have, that we've been studying for many, many years, says positive reinforcement is the most effective, the fastest, and the most humane way to train any animal, whether it's a working animal or a companion animal. And once you know that, and you know those methods, and you know your reinforcers for your animal, you can train anything. We can train elephants at the zoo to offer a leg without crushing a trainer or a veterinary staff to have any sort of work done on its hoof, or to offer an ear for a blood draw, or have a lion. I have a great picture somewhere, I couldn't find it, of a lion or a tiger offering its paw up for the zookeeper to trim its nails and feeding it treats. I think it was like a big steak or something. But the whole point is we can train any animal. Any animal can be trained to do what we want, but also what they're willing to do for the right reward. We just have to find what that is. This is Riot. She lived at the hospital where I work briefly. She was a terrible hospital cat. She climbed on everybody and she was just wild. So she lives with one of our assistants now, but I was working on training with her to get her to go to her bed on cue. We just didn't have enough time to accomplish that before she climbed up the wrong doctor's back. So, so she is at home being trained by her assistant mom now to enjoy life. Okay. Myth number 5 is that cats only need veterinary care if they're acting sick. So if I were to tell you to think of a cat as a prey species, would that be your first instinct? Most people think of cats as predators, right? I mean, they are technically, they are predators. They prey on small animals and crickets in my basement and whatever else they can get their hands on. It's a natural thing that they do. They predate on smaller things, but they are also a prey species, and that really drives a lot of their behavior. If you've ever taken a cat to the vet, do they normally like it? Do they like leaving their house? Do they like having strangers try and touch them and grab them out of their carriers? Yeah, I mean, they're a prey species, so we are predators to them. Anything bigger than them is a predator, and they will respond accordingly. The other thing about them, because they are a prey species, whenever they are sick or not feeling well, they really hide it, and they're not going to want to show any weakness. So what you have to watch out for are the very, very subtle signs that you're seeing something isn't quite right. Maybe they're instead of coming down off the countertop, just jumping right down, they're leaning down and trying to get their front paws closer to the floor before they make that jump. There's probably some pain there somewhere, and they're going to hide that. If they're not as active as they used to be and sleeping more, cats sleep a lot, but are they sleeping more than they should because they're not feeling well? Vomiting, not a normal thing for cats. Hairballs, not normal. Anything like that is really a sign of illness, but we also tend to believe that cats get hairballs, cats vomit, it's normal, but it's not. And there's a lot of misconception out there with cat health and what to do about it. One of the biggest things that I see that cats are relinquished for to shelters or euthanized even is for behavior problems surrounding the litter box. So imagine you have, and I had this when I was growing up, I had an old cat and she stopped using the litter box at some point. She was just destroying the carpets in the house. And I was very young. I had no idea what to do about any of this. It was my mom's responsibility at that point, and we just ended up eventually ripping up the carpet and replacing it, but didn't really address the problem. And the problem, who knows, it could have been that it was too painful for her to lift her paws up and get into her litter box at that point. She could have had some sort of aversion to going to where the litter box was located because of some sort of scary experience that happened, or maybe it's down in the basement and it's too hard to get down the steps anymore. There's any number of reasons why the litter box could be avoided. Cats are sensitive, they don't necessarily like change. They don't like when furniture changes. They don't like when their litter changes. They don't like when the couch moves. I mean, they're very sensitive creatures to any sort of change to their environment. So it doesn't take a whole lot to set them off, but we do need to still rule out that medical cause for why that behavior has changed. Maybe there's some pain, or maybe you introduced a new kitten and the new kitten's using the litter box and your cat's not really thrilled about the new addition to the household. So I left a lot of time here for questions because usually when I do this talk or any talk like this, there's a lot of questions that come up. People have behavior problems or behavior questions that with their own cats. So I am happy to take any questions that you guys have and make it sort of like a roundtable discussion. Yeah.
Well, that's a possibility that we can to Washington State. Yeah.
Oh.
Good combination.
Yeah.
And we're trying to, my daughter who lives in, she used to be a vet tech. But she lives a lot with dogs. So we're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
12 and a half to 14 and a half. Each, the biggest one's 14 6.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got some.
On moving. So for
I didn't get them there.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So the question for those of you on Zoom, if you couldn't hear, is we are trying to figure out how best to move across the country with 3 cats to reduce the amount of stress and make it as successful a trip as possible. So what I would recommend first and foremost is get in touch with your veterinarian. And what they can do is a lot of times we will prescribe a medication called gabapentin as a sedative and anxiolytic. So anxiolytic is something that reduces anxiety, and that's something that you can give and fly with them, or you could drive, but that's a long drive. That's a lot more stressful than a shorter flight. So if there's any way that you can fly them there, that would probably be your better method. That would probably be least stressful because it's less time, significantly less time than driving from to Washington State from Maryland. That's about as far as you can get in the contiguous 48. But reducing the amount of time that you're spending with a stressful event is going to be your key here. And there's a lot of supplements, a lot of things that you can add in and try. There's a product called Feel Away, if you're not familiar with it. Yes, it's great. Yes, they have the new Optimum one out. That's the diffuser only right now. I wish they would make it into a spray. Feel Away is this wonderful product made by Ceva, CEVA. And it comes in a diffuser, it comes in a spray. They have little wipes that you can wipe the carrier down. And basically what it is, it's a pheromone, a chemical pheromone that mimics the pheromones that cats give off to calm each other and make it a familiar scent. Yes, which Adaptal now, if you're familiar with that one, is called Thunder Ease. So if you're looking for it, it's now a different name, it's different branded, but it's the same thing, a pheromone that helps with calming. The Feel Away Optimum is the newest one that's out, and that one is only available right now in the diffuser, but that's what a lot of people use within the home. Yeah, the spray is really helpful for short times because you can spray it on like a towel or a bed or something, and it lasts for about 4 hours. So it's helpful if you had the Feel Away spray and you were flying, you could have like a towel that you sprayed and put it in there, and then maybe have a backup towel that you could spray, let it sit for 15 minutes because it's got an alcohol base to it. So that's kind of aversive if you just put it straight in with them, but spray it, give it 15 minutes, and then put a new towel in during that long flight. As far as the move itself goes, just introducing into a new home, new place, they're going to probably be stressed out for the first couple weeks to months, depending on how long it takes to move and unpack and get everything settled. So usually what I recommend is whatever meds your veterinarian prescribes. It's usually gabapentin. Sometimes they'll use trazodone or something. Use that for like the first, and the feel away for the first couple of weeks at least, and get them into one room first and then slowly expand their environment. As long as they're handling everything well together, yes. If they're stressed out enough, sometimes cats that usually get along will no longer get along, and you may have to do a reintroduction. But if you have familiar scents in with them, and they're close enough they can smell each other throughout the process, you might be okay with just keeping them all together. Just have to kind of play it by ear. Mhm. Yeah.
So we devised this thing in a large dog area.
Mhm.
A bench in it, so we can sit outside and
Yeah, I would. And you would definitely, your veterinarian would tell you this, but I would do like a trial dose of whatever they prescribe before you travel, just to see how they react on it, because you want to make sure it's actually going to be effective, but also that they're not too sensitive, that they're really, sometimes you'll see a lot of ataxia, like stumbling around, and if you have something that they can jump up on, they may fall. If it's not too high, then the likelihood of them hurting themselves is lower, but those are all things that you'll want to take into consideration. So
I'm wondering if you already have this in built,
yeah, just in case, we need it.
an introduction beforehand.
oh yeah,
Testing it out.
yeah.
See, putting it in, they love it already.
Oh great.
They're very explorative. Yes, true. Anything strange. What's that?
That bodes well.
There's a chair right from here over to there. Oh, so now it's chair.
Yeah. Yeah, that bodes well. And there's different levels of resilience that you get. And there's a lot of things that play into that, all the way from like intrauterine effects of the mom's hormones and stress levels to maternal care. How well were they cared for by the mom? And then, early experiences for socialization. So all that stuff, most of the time we don't know. And we just see the effects later on. But if you have pretty resilient cats already, then that does sound like it will be helpful for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you can do kind of like a desensitization and counter conditioning, or not counter conditioning because they're already. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's immediate once they smell it. Sometimes it'll take a little bit of time if they're really stressed out. It all just kind of depends on how stressed they are, and if they are stressed enough, and that stress level, that cortisol is really, really high in their system, the feel away may not be effective. It may be that it can be part of like a multimodal approach to reducing stress or anxiety.
Something you could have out. You spray it with the towel, 15 minutes to settle,
Mhm.
and like it's around like great.
So a lot of fear-free practices will have those towels like readily sprayed and available, like 4 hours. Yep. So a lot of places will spray them in the morning, and then at lunchtime we'll spray them again so that they last a little bit longer. And you can have those like right at the door so that whenever people come in, they can put it right over. A lot of times I'll recommend, like if I know most cats are gabapentin deficient, in my opinion, when they're coming into the vet, because they're being taken out of their regular environment that is automatically stress inducing. So having the feel away is helpful for sure. We have all of our rooms have feel away diffusers plugged into them, but can't hurt you can't overdose on feel away. You can't overdose on a pheromone. So we spray the towel, put it over the carrier as soon as they walk in the door, and then leave it there so that they have that smell. And hopefully it's helping to calm them down in the first 10 minutes or so while they're getting settled in the room, and the assistant's taking the history, and then the doctor's eventually coming in. So medicating cats is something that I have created an entire course on for Pet Sitters International, because it is a difficult thing. It is a difficult thing to do, medicating cats. I'm working on trying to medicate mine. I am actually pretty lucky, and sometimes I can get her to take things in a pill pocket. It's usually I get a couple of days and then she's like, no, thank you, not anymore. But feel away would be helpful in that situation if you had it plugged in as a diffuser and it just kind of was like at steady state. In the moment, kind of stress reducing options are really medication. Unfortunately, it's kind of that circle of impossibility. So what medication are you trying to give?
At the moment, I'm trying to get, syringe of, it's for the cat health.
Okay.
So, and I pretty much know that
Mhm.
I was thinking of something to do with something. But this is.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, they learn for sure. And and it's hard because you want to balance providing the medical care that they need with maintaining that bond. That human animal bond is really important. So one of the things, if you can try a pill and see if that works better, then you can always try that. I know some cats are really great. I pet sit for this one cat that takes thyroid meds, and all you have to do is put that piece of pill on top of his wet food and he does not even know it's there because he's so obsessed with the wet food. So you can get a little bit creative with cats and try different things. With pills it's a little bit easier because liquids you can't really do a whole lot with, as far as trying to mix it in with things, but you could try putting it in a bowl and mixing it with something like tuna juice, or even kind of mixing it in and making like a little paste with some, just a very little bit of like butter or cream cheese or something that the cat finds appealing, something that will kind of mask that taste and that they have the freedom to go up to and eat on their own without you being involved and shoving something down their throat. So yeah, so it's difficult, and it's definitely something to think about when you're trying to give medications. Obviously high blood pressure, that's something that we need to medicate for sure. A lot of times it's trial and error, trying to find the way, but using the towel and trying to give something afterwards that is a reward a lot of times will help. If you can lure them over with something, give them the medication, use something else that's higher value than whatever the lure was. Shouldn't be the same, because eventually they'll start picking out, okay, this is now a conditioned stimulus of something that I know what's coming next and I don't want that. So I'm going to avoid that thing. Yeah, it does not take very long. They're very smart. They can make those associations very, very quickly. Depends. Yeah,
People be like.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. And I think there's a little bit of there's a shift that's happening now in training in general of like, what should we be training and what is the purpose of training? Where, you know, historically we do obedience training and there's a focus on commands and doing what the owner wants the animal to do. There's a lot more movement now towards training behaviors that are useful. So instead of sit, stay, lay down, we're teaching targeting or like touch. We're teaching stationing, like go to place, and we're teaching other things that we can use. And attention is a big one too. Teaching to, you know, eyes on me. And those are things that we can use in the moment whenever we do come across a problem behavior that we can then try and change the behavior. We want an alternate response. We want, instead of dog examples come easier to me when we're thinking about training because nobody trains cats, right? It's so much fun. It's really fun to train cats because it's like a novel thing that nobody does. So when you teach a cat to sit, it's like, oh my God, look at the cat, it's sitting. But for dogs, if you have a dog barking on the leash and you want to train that dog to not be so reactive to the other dog, what you see, this drives me nuts every time I'm running, you see the people going, no, 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 yanking on the leash. But what the problem is, they're not telling the dog what to do. They're trying to tell the dog what not to do. A lot of times, or if you see them shocking the heck out of them with the shock collars, they're just reinforcing that negative association with whatever they're reacting to, and they're going to react more to it. They don't know that you're telling them, stop barking because I don't want you to. They just see person, I'm getting shocked. Person, I'm getting shocked. Or other dog, I'm getting shocked. This is bad. Other people are bad. Other dogs are bad because I'm getting shocked. We see this with invincible fences all the time. Stepping off my soapbox. The back to your question, whenever you are trying to train something, if it's not happening within, you know, I can't give you a number, but like within 10 to 20 repetitions of trying to get something to happen, then you're probably doing something wrong. Or yeah, so it's probably trainer error, or the reinforcer is not reinforcing like you want it to be, or you're not being clear. That's a lot of it is communication and clarity of communication and timing of giving that treat. So if you ever learned about clicker training, using that clicker as a bridge between what the animal has done that you want it to do to you're getting a treat is essential to make that timing work. So if you have a dog that you want to train to sit, and the dog comes up and sits and you're like, oh, good job. And then you're reaching for your treat. And while you're reaching for the treat, the dog jumps up on you and then you give it a treat. You have just reinforced dog jumping up on you, not sit. So the clicker, or some people will use like a marker word, is something that you're taught in training courses to charge up. So you just click the clicker, and this is back to your classical conditioning. You click the clicker, get a treat, click the clicker, get a treat. And what happens eventually is it's like Pavlov's dogs, right? They already know, like, I love treats. I start salivating for treats. They hear the clicker. It's like the bell in Pavlov's dogs experiments. If you're familiar with that, the bell will elicit the salivation because they know bell equals treat equals I'm going to salivate because I get to eat it. So what you want is to have the dog sit, click the moment that their butt hits the floor, and then that gives you time to give the treat because they know click means treat. So a lot of times it's timing with that, not being able to deliver the reinforcement on time. Sometimes it's like clarity of communication. So I always recommend people set up a camera if you're doing a training session, because it's also fun to watch back. Set up a camera and do whatever you're training, whether you're training the cat to sit or do a high five or spin. I've had friends that have done all these things with their cats, and it's really cute. And you can see sometimes you're using a hand motion or you're trying to cue it by a capture method where you're anticipating the behavior. It's just not super clear what you want from the animal. And so being able to make sure that what you're communicating to them is really clear is really important. We're verbal communicators primarily, animals are not. So it's a really fun experiment too, to see what is, if you're training on a verbal cue and a hand signal, which is the stronger cue for them to do that. So I did this recently actually for a project for school, where I have, my dog is trained to spin, and I can give the hand motion or I can say the word, but I usually do them both at the same time. And if you separate them out, if I say spin, he's like, what? What do you want? What do you want me to do? But if I use the hand motion, it doesn't matter if I go this way or that way. If I do some sort of hand motion that looks like the spin motion, he'll do it, and he'll do it if I say it at the same time. But they are very visual learners. They communicate with each other and with other animals and with us through body language. They can't talk to us. As much as I would love to be able to talk to any of my animals and have them talk back, although it would be a little bit unnerving. And I might not want to know what my cats think of me all the time, but that's how they communicate, is through body language. So using those hand signals and that kind of communication and being really aware of your body is really important, because sometimes like one of your hands will be doing something, or you'll be standing in a different position, or your hands on the treat bag and they're focused on that sort of stuff. It's being very aware of, be aware of your hands.
Along the lines of cat training, I think what I'm understanding is like the best things to start with cat training are attention, place, and touch, or target or touch. But what are the best reinforcers for cats? Are we saying go to Petco and get cat treats, or are there anything that we get in the grocery store that might be really useful for training?
Food is generally the go-to. It's easiest. You want something that you can deliver quickly and have it be rapidly consumed or used. So if you're trying to use a toy, that might be the preferred reinforcer for that animal, where they don't really care about food, but they want to play with the little crinkle ball. That was Riot's favorite, the little cat that we used to have in our clinic. She wanted to play with that crinkle ball more than she wanted anything else. And that's fine, but it's going to lengthen the amount of time that it's taking for your training, because you have to get the toy, they have to play with it for a second, and then you have to get it back. Whereas with just small pieces of food, whether it's a piece of a treat or a little chunk of tuna or whatever it is, there's 1,000,001 cat treats out there now on the market that you can take those and even cut them up even smaller than they already are, to give little quick reinforcers so you can get multiple repetitions. Because it's not necessarily about the amount of time that you're spending training, it's about the number of repetitions. And so the faster you can get those repetitions, the less time you're going to spend training. And really it's in the eye of the beholder. So if the cat really likes any kind of treat, and you can just use treats, that's usually easier. But if the cat will not work for treats, you've got to find the reinforcer that they find reinforcing. Yes, they will do that.
Here, I can be at dinner in the house and without being that you go, like, you want this treat?
Mm-hmm.
And 9 times out of 10, I'll go out and go, you want Ralphie? So Ralphie stands there, walks through my legs and some kitty routine, until I give him, reach up and I open up his fingers, concentrates on the floor, and then Frank comes because Frank knows that Ralph asks for treats, he gets them. And Ralph knows that if Frank's asking for treats, Ralph comes because Ralph gets them too, because they're both standing there going, yeah, and I do, give me my treats.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to think. They could be trained, but
Mhm.
is there some way I can twist it around?
Say now.
Yep,
So, yeah.
yep.
You guys know.
So that is a common problem, is that you're reinforcing that behavior, right? Because they're doing it, you're providing what they want, and that's fine if you don't mind doing that. If it were something, if it were something different where it was a behavior that you definitely wanted to stop, what we see is that any sort of variable reinforcement schedule, where think of like a slot machine, when you go, if you were to like go gamble and you play the slot machine, there's no way to predict when you're going to hit it big. So that's why people tend to go and they gamble and they play the slot machine, or they, play whatever game that they like, because they never know when they're going to hit it big, but there's always a chance. So whenever you're trying to untrain a behavior that you're reinforcing, whether you're going to get treats or you're giving attention or whatever it is that's reinforcing that behavior, you have to completely stop doing it. Because if you even just give in one time, and only, one time out of 10, you're giving those treats, there's always a chance. So they'll keep coming back. They'll keep doing it.
I mean, we're escalating the teachers. Okay, so the union out, that's fine. I mean, now you have to-
Mhm.
Sounds like they're willing to work, they're looking to work.
Yeah. It's very mentally enriching for cats. Oh, yeah.
Comes to get big. And it's safe. I can
It's stopped. Make it work.
It back on again. It got me so excited. It's like, where's my stop?
And then every time we put it up, it's got this thing now where he hops up on his seat. We have to turn the faucet on, so we can drink.
Hmm.
Drink from the faucet. He's
Yeah.
very assistant.
Yeah. Yeah. Some cats really, really like running water. That's why they have so many like
He
cat
does.
fountains available.
They sound like some really smart cats.
They
Oh,
do. They do.
But they're just,
Yeah, yeah, they get together at night and say, I'm not a mom on business.
what's on the other hand, will not pee in the litter box. Please, oops, in the litter box, but she pees on the floor. So we've gone to buying these trading pads, doggy trading
Mhm.
pads on the floor, so at least when she pees, we can clean that up, it's a lot easier to work.
But she just.
And I can't seem to, can't seem to break her. And I think she was a bring back. We got her, that's she was a bring back. And I think that was one of the reasons why she got brought back, because she pees on. But only on that, she never, anywhere else, just right by the litter box. And we learned to deal with it because we love her. We're not gonna give her up. She did a good job.
She's always done it since you've had her.
Yeah, it started off, she was taking the program
Hmm.
and so I took the rug out, so she laid on the floor.
But it's always in the same spot. right?
Yes,
The litter box.
so we tried changing the you have a couple of kitty litters. I lowered the entrance to the kitty litter. So we got
Hmm.
money basket, so I cut the money down. So that it'd be easier to get in, so that would make the end. Nothing.
At least she poops it.
Yeah.
But she does.
How many boxes do you have?
I mean, I think that it's supposed to be one for each cat, we don't have room.
One for each cat, plus one, and one on at least one on each level of your home. So it's like a crazy number of litter boxes, and most people don't follow that rule. But
Well, we don't have room for that.
yeah, like I understand. I tried to teach my cats to pee in a toilet, so I've been there.
I think that once,
That will be probably an aversive event that would destroy that, so.
And then one day he slipped and fell in and.
It happens, it happens.
But is there anything, she's not a tree,
No, she's not.
and it's funny because she's.
But even my dad did.
There's a product called Cat Attract that you can add to the litter to try and entice them to go into it, but
Well, she goes in the litter.
yeah, yeah. Number one rule, I think you guys weren't here for this yet, always rule out medical. So
Yeah, we've done that.
no UTI, no bladder
Speaking of which, I have to
stones,
be in
no,
London on Thursday and might have some time after lunch.
yeah.
Your position.
It is. Any
Very-
objection?
Lazy, I guess. I don't-
Yeah,
Your two litter boxes.
Mrs. Fry.
No,
No.
unfortunately,
Can I get back to you on that?
yeah, unfortunately, we can't cover it. Cover the
That's
litter.
all right.
And the thing's
Not
about-
totally
And
exhausted.
each cat, you know, they.
I just thought we
litter
might have a
box,
question.
each cat, well, this cat will go into the box, next time it goes to that litter box.
Yeah, then
No,
you.
no separation.
yeah. Be interested to see when you move, if it changes, if you're able to
Yeah,
have,
Separation.
yeah. Because a lot of times too is you don't necessarily see with the litter box, even if you were to set it up, but if you could set up a camera to see if another cat is bullying or preventing access or,
The boys could get into this.
Very sensitive going to
yes,
that room. Very-
yes.
Very sensitive moment. Very.
They're very vulnerable. Yes, they're in a very vulnerable position. That's why they tend to be, they need to feel safe.
The other hand, I lived in a small street by myself. They had one litter box. Jammed in between the wall and the toilet, they had 3 cats.
Yep.
Not a problem.
Oh, I break all the rules for my own cats. My litter box is in the basement. It's under the stairs. There's the laundry down there. It's not right next to the laundry, but I have one big box. It's one of those under bed storage containers, so it's really like the size of 2 boxes. And they've been fine. You do what works for your cats, and this has worked for me for 10 plus years. So that's where we're at. But there are some cats out there that are really sensitive and they need that special litter and that special kind of box, whether it's the kind that they have to jump in the top or it doesn't have a lid or it's very flat or the litter has to be a certain depth.
Yeah.
Just very. It depends on what you're okay with. If that's working for you and
At least she's, you know, bad.
Yeah.
Fighting.
yeah,
And
it's
knowing it before.
It's all about what works for you and what works for the cat. And if you've ruled out a medical cause, then yeah.
It doesn't-
Yeah. See, that's that spite that we say they don't have. But I have many examples, like there's so much evidence that I have, and I just have a hard time with that one. Animal cognition is an area that is obviously really difficult to study, especially because a lot of the information that we get about neurology is from rats and from brains that are no longer alive, and you can't see what's going on in them at that very moment. You can't know what they're thinking, and that I think that bothers me the most. You cannot know what they're thinking. You can make inferences, and it sure seems like spite. We don't know. Supposedly it doesn't exist. Do we have any questions in the chat? Or if there were any in there?
See, I know we have one message in the chat, Sammy had to step away early. Anybody online, do we have any online questions? And if you do, you can go ahead and type those in the chat and it should let me see those questions.
I've got a couple of resources up here for you, which I'm happy to share. I guess they'll be in this recording too. Decoding Your Cat is a book that was written by a group of diplomats of the American College of Veterinary Behaviorists. So veterinary behaviorists that are board certified. They came together and they wrote this wonderful, wonderful book that was released a year or two ago. It was preceded by Decoding Your Dog. Obviously, that's generally where people tend to go, is to the dogs. And even in my master's program, there's heavy emphasis on dogs. So anytime I get a chance to throw in some cat behavior, I do. Yeah, I love cats. They're just so great. I've had cats my whole life. Yes, right. They tend to be independent, but I do know if I go away for a while and then I come back from vacation, they definitely tell me like, okay, well, we missed you when you were gone for that long, but you know, during the day, it's fine. Yeah. Mhm. But yes, Decoding Your Cat is great. There's a ton of information in there, from kitten all the way up to senior, including medical problems and like troubleshooting and things like that. It's a book. Yep. And then there's two other websites on here that I have: Fear Free Happy Homes, which I believe we have some flyers for, which are great. That is all. I talked about Fear Free earlier. That is the pet owner portal for all things fear free and behavior. There will be some information on how to pill your cat on there, how to give medications in a fear-free way. You can search, it's free, everything is free, and it's all information that's been written and reviewed by veterinary behaviorists and veterinary behavior technicians. So it's all very, very trustworthy information. The other one up here is the cat people of the veterinary world have formed the AAFP, and they have their own website specifically dedicated to cat-friendly homes. So that's catfriendly.com. And it's similar to the Fear Free Happy Homes website. It's just very specifically for cats.
Oh, the Jackson Galaxy.
Yes, to be 100% honest, I haven't watched it since I started becoming interested in pursuing like more behavior education. So I can't comment on whether or not his methods are approved. I'm sure he does. I know for sure, and I'm a little bit biased because most things on TV are not really great representations of the way things that should be. Cesar Millan is not at all a type of trainer that I would want anywhere near any of my animals. And I would never, ever take my animals to Dr. Pol for veterinary care. There's a lot of lawsuits and board complaints against him. And there's a lot on TV that it's on TV for a reason. It's not necessarily best practice.
Near the dog. We'll get you some good information. Victoria Stillwell has a show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, it's Me or the Dog. And then Craig Patel had one, and you might be able to find it on YouTube. His Domesticated Manners, Craig Patel. but it was in Great Britain is where they aired it.
Mm,
So he's done a lot of video stuff that will
yeah,
get you in sort of the right direction. Victoria is also British, yes, but it's near the dog does air in the United States.
Yeah.
Is it on both websites, the introduction to cats?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. I have handouts of my own. So if you were to, and I can give you guys my email address if you were to have any questions that you couldn't find answers to, or you wanted to ask, feel free to email me anytime. Yeah.
When we introduce them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are bring all the rules in my house. Fine, we can rent that home, keep it in a condo, and neighbors here, my boyfriend's like, you
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think is positive.
Yeah.
Nice city, but, yeah.
Do you work in a shelter?
I work at.
Okay. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha.
All right, guys, we are at time, so for the sake of the recording, I'm going to. See, how do we unshare
I think
screen?
I have to do it. I'm in control.
There you go. Got it. Let's see if I can put my skin myself up front. Thank you so much, Alyssa, for joining us today here at WAG Workshops. For more information, check out wagworkshops.org. And this was wonderful. We had a great time. Thank you so much for joining us today.
For having me.